Hey leaders, what does it take to lead effectively across school settings, whether it's rural, urban, and suburban? Well, our guest today, Jeff Linden, or you may know him as Principal JL, has done just that, bringing leadership experience from a wide range of educational environments. So let's get started.
Intentional and purposeful focus on building a culture of collaboration is the secret for leaders striving to make a difference. In building a culture of collaboration, Kurtis and Lorna Hewson will share simple tips, ideas, and strategies to take your organization's collaborative efforts to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration. As always, I'm Lorna Hewson, co-founder and lead learner of Jigsaw Learning.
And I'm Kurtis Hewson. And today we're joined by our new friend, Jeff Linden, an experienced educator and school leader. Over his 18-year career, Jeff has served as a math and physical education teacher, coached multiple sports, and spent the last 7 years as a building principal. Currently, he leads Hastings Public School in Nebraska, and we're excited to learn from his journey in fostering collaboration across diverse school communities. So, Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, so great to have you. And we were just commenting before coming on air that you're in Nebraska, we're in Alberta, but we're both experiencing
the same weather.
Yeah, the experience of coming out of a deep freeze recently.
Yeah, no, I know it's been kind of a challenge because people are like, "Oh, we're going to cancel school," and we're like going, "No, we're still going to have school, and we're going to keep going." And yeah, I've had to answer some emails, but I just kind of punt that over to my superintendent because he's the one that makes those decisions. I kind of go with the flow on that.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, I began my teaching career in northern Alberta, and people often shudder at the realization that our cutoff point for school closure was right around minus 40 degrees Celsius. And I don't have the Fahrenheit conversion right away, but I can tell you it's really, really cold.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cold. Yeah.
So, Jeff, why don't we start off with us learning just a little bit more about you? We've shared out the bio, but can you share with us an experience that has had a significant impact on the leader you are today? And then we're going to dive into some of those leadership lessons.
Yeah, I think I could point to a lot of different experiences because throughout my career as an educator, I would watch really closely my principals and my leaders of my buildings, and I would learn from just watching them what to do, what not to do, kind of how I would lead. But if I wanted to go down to just one example, I'd probably go back to my military experience. I was in the Army Reserve for 8 years, where I was a NCO or a sergeant in the military, where I did through leadership training there. But my experience in the military taught me that as a leader, you need to have that experience down in the grunt stage, down in where you do the work, down where you understand what the people are going through. So before I got into becoming a principal, I spent 11 years in the classroom. Because of my experience, I learned people that had that experience in the classroom or in the working with the kids would be more effective if they were ones that were only there for, I'm not going to put anybody down, but 4 years in the classroom, and then you become an administrator. I don't think that cuts it. I think you're not as effective because you haven't seen or done the things in the classroom where as a leader now I can speak to those things. And I learned in the military, the officers that had the junior enlisted experience and the ones that did not were different types of leaders. And the people that led the best were the ones that had the junior enlisted experience. And so that's what I wanted to make sure before I became an administrator, that I had that experience so I could speak to those things before leading a group of people.
Yeah, and that's such an important part, is being able to watch and listen and learn from other leaders in that. Was there any one leader in particular that really was a mentor to you, or that you just really admired and replicate what they did as a leader?
I think I have a couple. So for me, my educational career is kind of all over the place. So, I tend to move around every 3, 4 years, but a lot of that is because I'm trying to better myself as an educator. I would say there would be a couple administrators that, kind of helped me, I guess. I would mold me a little bit. Mr. Mike Troxel was one of them. He was my principal at Hershey, Nebraska, where he was the one that made it okay to have them in your classroom for no other reason, just to hang out and see what you're up to. Because up to that point, my experience is the principal shows up, something's wrong. And I
Hmm.
was always like nervous about when a principal would show up in my classroom, like, is there anything wrong? Is there, you need anything? And they're like, and when he came in, he's like, I'm just going to hang out. I'm like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah.
Experience after that. So I take that from him where I want people to be okay with me being around in the classrooms, in and out, seeing how they're doing and things like that. I took that from him. And I would say Brian Bagley from Millard North in Omaha was another one. I only was under him for a year, but I just saw how he interacted. So I'm going from small rural school in Hershey, Nebraska now to
Yeah.
Omaha Metro. So I've seen two different people being leaders at different capacities, but he's leading a building with 2,500 students. I mean, it's gigantic compared. That I mean, 625 students was the population of Hershey.
Yeah.
Where I was going from. So I got to see kind of how he interacted with his staff and kind of like he was more like, hey, keep me informed. I will work with you. I will be empathetic, but I will also have my expectations and my standards. And if you don't meet them, I'll let you know. And so I think those are the two that kind of stick out of my mind throughout my teaching career when it comes to people that I watch and kind of emulate a little bit in my own leadership style.
It's so interesting, Jeff, because I'm reflecting on what you had said before about getting that classroom experience and those reps, and then having the principal in the room and, it's trying to normalize it, or as opposed to is something wrong. And I think those are lessons that we take from classroom teacher to an educational leader. I often share, just like an effective classroom teacher, you need routines, you need clarity, need expectations when you're leading student learning. I think the same applies when you're leading a building. And if you were a teacher and the only time you ever called home was when there was a problem, of
Mhm.
course you're going to have a different reaction than if you're calling and keeping regular communication. Well, the same applies from the leadership lens for us
Yes,
as well.
exactly.
So, Jeff, I first came to know of you from a social media presence where Principal JL was sharing insights and thoughts and listening to your podcast as well. When did that happen? How long have you been engaging as Principal JL? And I assume that's Principal Jeff Linden. I kind of made that connection
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me. Well, and what led you to branching out for with that endeavor?
Yeah, so Principal JL is my brand, right?
Yeah.
And so honestly, that actually started in 2022. Now, I have a podcast, but I haven't been regularly doing it until December of 2024.
Mhm.
So with that, you know, when I was getting into it in 2022, a lot of it had to be, it was around the idea there's not a lot of people out there in my position sharing their stories. Because one thing that I've noticed is when I go to our principal meetings, our regional meetings, our ESU meetings, our state conferences and things, it's really fun to sit there and listen to each other's stories and learn from each other. And so I thought, well, a good way to do that is maybe to start a podcast and share the things that I'm learning as a leader to other people, and maybe that will help them. Because I think, when you get out and you're looking around, there's not a lot of resources out there for somebody to get into, on the daily. We can go to these conferences, we can
Yeah.
go to these other things, which are great. But when you get back to the day-to-day grind, you don't have something there. So that's where it kind of inspired me to do it. Um, a lot of other things kind of kept me from being consistent with it until honestly until this past November. I said, you know what, I think I got a lot to share. I have a lot of insights, a lot of things that I've
Mhm.
shared from December 1st up till now at this point have been things I've been doing the last, you know th- really 3 years at my
Mhm.
current position. Plus a lot of that is carryover from my previous rural school position as a
Yeah.
principal as well. So a lot of things I learned from that, I applied into this job, and I've seen a lot of good gains, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of see how our teaching staff and our people come together and collaborate to solve these issues that they've been asking questions before I even got here. So it's
You
been a
know,
lot of
I find it so interesting because obviously we're in that online space and are sharing and interacting as well. There's something about trying to explain what you're thinking or understanding out to an audience. And again, you don't know who's listening
fun.
or
Yeah,
whatnot, but it really helps to solidify and clarify ideas. But then there's also a selfish side of this of, man, every time we engage with someone, we take away
We
so
learn
much
so much.
learning. And we recently had a teacher, Lucas Clark, on the podcast, and he said, I'm curious about the classroom, about schools, and it's really awkward when I go into a staff room and lean over to somebody who's having their lunch and say, "So tell me a little bit about your philosophy of teaching." But you
yeah.
don't get the chance to do that. But in this space, you can ask some of those questions.
Yeah, no, and I think my big thing is to try to share other educational leaders' stories,
Mhm.
kind of tell people what I've been up to, what we've been doing. Hey, we were doing something, and this looks like it's working. Maybe if that's something you want to try, try it. And I think we in education we like to we do a lot of beg, steal, and borrow, right? We will recycle things, or we'll take something somebody else has done and we'll make it our own because we could see that it works in certain situations. I think what people got to understand is, yeah, when we are doing some of the things, we are researching and looking at what other schools are doing. But at the same time, we're going to take that and make it our own because we got to make it work for our building because
Mhm.
every building is unique. And I think that's what people need to remember about those things. So I'm just trying to share out those things. I've had guests on my show, educational leaders that have done it for a long time. I've had, Principal Mo, she's a TikTok principal
Yeah.
on. I had Angela Kelly's on. I have a few more people lined up to come on my show, which has been a lot of fun. Since December, I've just kind of just said, you know what, I'm going to branch out. I'm going to really kind of open up my brand more. So, I can get the message out there. And I think I'm just trying to help people. And if it helps one person, then I've been successful.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
so good.
of course, the focus of this podcast is around building that culture of collaboration. So, in the spirit of us sharing and helping out with others, you want to lead for our next question, Lorna?
Yeah, just thinking about, of course, we strongly believe in one of our purposes in leadership is to build that culture of collaboration. So, Jeff, in your many experiences, what are some of the things that you would support a leader in doing in getting to that collaborative culture? So, what are some of the things that you would coach or suggest for a leader to build that culture of collaboration?
We'll be right back to continue this episode. If you're all about creating a culture of collaboration, then you know clarity is the key to making it work. But let's be real, gaining clarity as a leader isn't always easy. That's where Casey Watts comes in. On Catching Up with Casey, she breaks down what it takes to build cohesive, vision-driven teams with real talk, practical strategies, and a little bit of fun along the way. Tune in live every Monday or catch the replay anytime on your favorite podcast platform. And now back to our conversation.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is you gotta like have something in writing when you come into being a principal or a leader. Because what I did is I do a 30, 60, and 90 layout to where I go, hey, this is what I'm gonna do in the first 30 days, but then this next 60, the next 90 days. And it gives people an understanding kind of like what you're there to do as a leader. And for me, my biggest thing was just building relationships with my staff first. I
Mhm.
mean, that was probably my number one goal coming into the principalship at my small rural school in Southern Valley, as well as my bigger school that I'm in now at Hastings High School, is to get to know my people, get to know how their personalities, how they tick, because that helps me get information on how I can approach them on things. But they get to know me. I don't want them to fear me. I don't want them to go, oh my gosh, the principal's in my room. And people forget you have that title, you have this presumed power. And that's hard for me because I'm like, I just want you guys to know I'm a person just like you. And I want you to know that I'm coming in here to support and help you. But I also want to get to know you on a level to where I am building that trust, right? So I'm getting to know them, not just their names, because I have 135 staff in my building. And so I
Mhm.
get to know their names, but I'm trying to find something unique about them to remember. And so I try to associate, okay, this person likes this. And then I can have conversations with them that are not about education to show them that I care about them as people and not just as employees.
Absolutely. Well, I really like that idea, and we've heard it over and over again in the conversations we have of, in your particular case, sharing out explicitly the 30, 60, 90, and being really explicit of, I really want to get to build relationships and know people. To me, that just goes to clarity. I think that's so important for collaboration is that we have a friend, Casey Watts, that talks about without clarity, you have chaos, which leads to confusion, uncertainty, fear, all those things that erode effective cultures of people working together. But even just that simple, here's what I'm intending to do. I'm putting it in writing. It's super clear. And then I'm going to hold myself to that too as a leader.
Yeah. No, and I actually shared that with them when I interviewed and said, this is what I'll do in the first year. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, this is my goal. And my thing is I listen. I
Yeah.
listen
Yeah.
to all the things that they're struggling with, the things that they would like to see that's different, the things that are going well as well. Because my biggest thing was just to be inquisitive, ask questions, try to understand why they do what they do. And then once I get a good handle on that, then we start looking at trying to change or shift the mindset on some things. Because I took over a building that, you know, they were scared of the administration team.
Yeah.
And I had to, I would say within the first 6 months, was try to get that taken care of to where they weren't afraid of the administration team because of some experiences they had. So my job was to, I'll be honest, my superintendent says, you're here to build the culture, and that's what I need you to do. And that's part of why I got the job is because they knew I did it before that I could, do it here. And so that's what my number one priority was to build a culture of the school to where people weren't afraid, but they were excited about trying new things. And I
So,
think it takes time to do.
yeah, and
It does.
I want to go back just a little bit because if there's any aspiring or beginning administrator that's listening to this, clarifying that I assume when you say my 30, 60, 90-day plan, it's not in the first 30 days, we're going to transform the timetable. In the
No,
next 60 days, we're going to introduce a new supervision and evaluation schedule. You're not talking about that. You're talking
no,
about
no.
first 30 days, I'm going to be present in your rooms and I'm going to get to know the team on a deeper level. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. I'm talking about, hey, within these first 30 days, I'm just going to get to know you.
Yeah. Be present.
I'm into your classroom. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be visible in the hallways. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to actually, my first step was to get to every person's classroom, introduce myself or say hi to them and get to know them on a level. And what I would do is I would use their plan period and go in and go, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything you need? What can I do to be supportive? Is there, things like that, but also get to know them on a personal level. Hey, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? Things like that. And so before I did anything was I got to every staff member and just small talked and got to know them and went in and connect with them. And that's my goal every year when I start the year is get into everybody's classroom, say hi. Now I know them, so it's a little like quicker to do, but
Yeah.
it's more to get in, say hi, how are you doing, visit them for a while. And then the kids get used to you coming in the classrooms too, because it used to be, oh shoot, the principal's here. What's going on? Now it's like, it's just Mr. Linden, right? No big deal because we're used to that. So I think, yeah, we were talking about the 30, 60, 90. A lot of it is I'm going to get to know you, then I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to try to hear you guys out. We're going to start thinking about some ways to make improvements. And then the next 90 days is more about, hey, these are all the things that you guys have brought to me. Let's start working towards some solutions to these things you brought. And so that's what that back end 90 days was about, was after I got to know you, I listened to your concerns, then it was let's find solutions together. And that's what my first year was like.
Yeah, and building that trust is so essential in when you're trying to get to know people and helping them to understand that you're there to help them and that we're
Yeah.
here to work together as opposed to I'm going to tell you what you need to do.
Well, and I
Yeah.
can imagine too, because I would do the same thing as an administrator, Jeff, is I'm not randomly wandering the halls to be present, and popping into a room here or there. I'm really strategic on when I'm going out. I'd be laying out my week to say, okay, here's the 4 classrooms I'm going to get into on this day. Here's the types of things I want to learn and find out. I mean, it was still relational and interactions, but it wasn't happening by accident.
Yeah. No, you have to be intentional for sure.
Hmm.
So, Jeff, what strategies have you used to shift your staff's mindset from fearing failure,
Or fearing the administrator is
yeah,
what you're saying too.
to really embracing that relationship as an opportunity for growth?
Yeah, I think once you build that relationship and that trust, the next step is to create a team. And we already have a school improvement team, but my biggest goal is when we have a school improvement team, I want a representative from each department there
Hmm.
because I need to be able to have input and feedback from each type of teacher that we have. Because, I have, oh shoot, it was like 7, 8 departments total. Everybody has their uniqueness into
Yeah.
how they teach and how they do things. And so what works in a classroom setting may not work in a non-traditional classroom setting. And so we have to think about all the different things. So my first step was to invite people onto the school improvement team. And
Mm,
then if I didn't have the people I want, I would invite the people that I would say, hey, we really need you, and this is why,
yeah.
to be on this school improvement team. A lot of people look at school improvement team as, oh, we got to solve, the district initiative of we want so much growth in this area. Well, I'm looking at things a little bit differently with that school improvement team. I'm looking more like, hey, what are the issues our building are having? What are the frustrations our teachers are having? And then how can we solve them? And so the very first year, it was like, we have a lot of kids wandering the halls. We have a lot of kids not being in class. We have a lot of kids on their phone or their personal electronic devices. We really want to get that cleaned up.
Yeah.
And so our first thing that we worked on was our technology policy, our personal technology piece, because, and on top of that, we were also trying to solve the wander in the halls issue. So we looked at a lot of different schools, what they're doing. And at that time, not a lot of people were doing a lot of things. Now it's like we're banning cell phones from every school. Now it's like, that's kind of what the kick is now. But we took an approach to where we wanted to teach digital citizenship, but also have expectations
Yeah.
and hold people accountable to those expectations. So we were able to work together and derive a policy that would do that to where, hey, we're giving our teachers autonomy to control this in their classroom, but yet we are holding our students accountable to when they can use them, when they can't use them, what's appropriate, things like that. And then the great thing is since we did it as a group, as together, it wasn't just me saying this is what we're doing. It's, hey, we came in as a team. And so my team did the presentation to the rest of the staff, because what they would do is we come together, we'd figure some things out, go back out and get feedback from your teachers. We'll come back, we'll talk about those feedbacks. So we just developed things throughout the rest of the year to get that to really what we wanted. So then I had my teachers present that information. It wasn't coming from me. It was coming from them, because my point was, if you guys are together on this, it will be successful. If I'm telling you that we're going to do this, it won't be successful. So I need you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
to be bought in together. And then what I can do is say, you know what, you guys remember, you guys decided this is what you wanted.
Yeah.
My job is now to hold you accountable to that.
Yes.
So we are staying on the same page. We're basically going in the right direction the way we want to go. So with that, with our personal electronic device policy. We also wanted to get kids out of the hallways and in the classroom. That's when we moved from paper, the old pink paper passes you'd go. We got rid of those and went to an electronic pass system.
Yeah.
And then the teachers decided to add an extra duty on. And I looked at them like, are you sure you want this extra duty? And they're like, yes, we need this extra duty. So we have hall monitors now. And I will tell you, because this was a teacher-led initiative and they bought in and it was collaborative together, our hallways are clear. Kids
Yeah.
are where they're supposed to be. Now, we have those kids that still, they get out and wander, but we have systems in place to where, hey, we're making sure kids are where they need to be. Their attendance is better getting to class at least. And then they're less distracted on their personal devices. And so the learning has gone up. And the
Mhm.
teachers will tell you that they, hey, yeah. And I have like qualitative data that I was able to get from them that I presented to our school board about how that first year went once we implemented it. And we're talking 97, 98% of our staff loved everything that we did. And a
Oh,
lot of that happens to be because it was driven by our teachers and our staff, and it was just supported by the administrative team.
So,
yeah.
Jeff, as you're speaking, recently I had shared a little video, and it was intended to make the point I'm about to make here, and doing it in a fairly tongue-in-cheek way of the idea that great leaders don't solve problems. Great leaders create systems to solve problems.
Mhm.
And what I meant by that, of course, there's going to be problems you have to take care of. We know that. But if you're feeling like, okay, I'm seeing that there's a problem in the hallways. And I'm going to go lock myself in the office for 2 days and I'll create the fix for this in any building, I would say, but especially a building your size. If you as leader have to solve every problem, you're in total reactive
You're
mode,
running.
whack-a-mole, and you're again creating confusion. But if we can build systems to attend to the problems, then it's your role as a leader to just create the systems, maintain the systems, and then clear the path so those systems can do their work. So I'm curious, in a school your size, it can't work without systems like a
Oh, it
school
can.
improvement team, department teams. If you were to stand up above your school and look down at all the different structures that you had in place for people to collaborate, what would you see? What would be some of the key features in your building right now?
Well, we are a PLC school,
Yeah.
so we have PLC time every Wednesday. So that's our collaboration time where we have our school teachers with their similar response teams where they get to basically, hey, where are kids at on these targets?
Mm.
What's our data say? How can we get these kids called in? We have intervention systems as well. We have tons of systems. I don't know where to go. But for us, I mean, I'm leading a school of 1,000 students, 135 staff roughly.
Yeah.
Um, and so with that, we have a leadership team. Basically, we meet weekly, but we have MTSS processes for academics, for behavior,
Yeah.
for social emotional needs, and now attendance. That's the new one for us is our attendance MTSS process. And that all came out of our school improvement team as well, which we initiated this year. So just looking down and seeing all the different things, we have a system for about everything that you can think of to where, hey, we'll see where you're at in it, and I'll kick you back to where you need to be, right? We'll go, okay, this is where we're at in this process, and this is where we need to start from here and move on. Because some people like to go to A to Z, is what we call it. We can't go to A to Z. We got to run the system. We got to run the process
Yeah.
because we want to do what's best for our kids. We want to make sure that we give everybody the opportunities that they need so we can get them in the best situation as possible. I mean, we have systems in place to determine if a kid's going to go to an alternative setting. We have to go through our tiers of interventions before we get to certain points. And that's where our leadership team comes in is we try to be proactive with every student that we see that, hey, this is a struggle. Let's try to help them. Let's try to, get the right people to them. And I'm blessed to have a bunch of great people, but we're also bringing in people from within our community, within our system. So it's not just an internal in our building stuff, which a lot of it is, but we're actually bringing people from the community into our processes to help kids with our attendance piece to help kids get to school and also help meet the needs and eliminate barriers of our students so they can come to school and they can learn. And that's our number one goal, right? Is to get our kids to school to learn so they can become productive members of society. And I think that's what we try to strive to do.
Yeah, you are talking our language.
Absolutely.
This is exactly some of the work that we do here, and that idea of setting up your systems to ensure that everything is coordinated and aligned, and that we are working, of course, with that ultimate goal of student learning and student success.
So I have a question about those systems because I made a mistake as an early administrator thinking that if I'm not present in each one of these systems, I'm not going to be well informed of what's going on, and B, people won't do what they need to do without me present. And it was a complete faulty way of thinking. And I heard a friend refer to it as that Superman syndrome as the beginning of I'll just put on a cape and solve everything,
problems,
be in everything. But again, with that building of systems, you're not going to be present in every of those conversations. Actually, it's detrimental to the culture if you have to be present in all of those. So, Jeff, I'd love to hear what are some specific things that you've done to empower other leaders within your building? Because with all of these systems in place, you need distributed leadership across your organization and building and empowering. So I'd love to hear some specific strategies of how do you create that distributed leadership and then empower it. We'll be right back to continue this episode. Are you meeting with your team in the hallway, staff room, conference room, or at the back of a classroom? We know that physical space is at a premium in most buildings. However, it is important to consider the impact that your meeting space has on the functioning and well-being of your team. Download our free Leader's Guide for planning spaces for collaboration. This guide will help to determine and plan for the best space for your teams, including considerations that contribute to effective meeting spaces, a checklist to be used when planning the space, and other additional resources. Access the guide at bit.ly/space checklist. That's bit.ly/space checklist, all one word. Get ready to ensure your meeting space is optimally configured to have the greatest impact possible for your next team meeting. And now back to our conversation.
Well, that's a great question. Now you're going to make me think a little bit. When it comes down to it, I think the systems are in place so we are collaborative. You know, yes, I am the building principal, but we have like our leadership team comes together, and that's kind of where our systems like gets aligned, and we're like, okay, there's this situation. We have people that have different things. So if it's like, hey, you know, counselor, I need you to check in with this. So the counselor will do that. You know, we just kind of know because we've done this so much, who needs to do what. And then we just say, go. My job is just to say, hey, you know what you got to do on this. Go do what you need to do. And then let me know kind of how that goes. Because like you said, I have a lot of things. Like I'm not going to go to every PLC every Wednesday all the time, right? I have no time. I don't got that kind of time. But will I check in and see how people are doing? You bet. But at the same time, I have to trust that my staff are professionals and they can do the job. And that's where that trust building comes in. I'm going to say, you know what? I trust you guys, but I'm here to help you if you need me. I'm here to support you if you have things come up. And they do a pretty good job of like, hey, we're having this situation. Could you help us? And I'll do that, right? But at the same time, I will check in and do things. So a lot of it, I just try to give my teachers autonomy, my leadership team autonomy in their specific roles. And my job is to support and hold people accountable within the systems, not to micromanage or to tell people how to run the system. Now, my other job is this is where we're at in the system. Let's make sure we get to this point and then run the system from there. And I think a lot of that is with our systems, we try to take the emotional part out of it to where we're using data, we're utilizing different things. So we're making better decisions, not based off of emotion, but based off of the information and data that we have. And so that can look a lot of different ways on the Pacifics. And then I'll go back to my military time is delegation, learning how to delegate
Yeah.
things.
Mhm.
I'm okay with this piece being handled by my assistant principal. Like my assistant principals are amazing. They have different things. They run different systems. I don't have to run them. You know,
Yeah.
there's different things that we do that they do for me. I have one principal that he handles the PBIS stuff. He's the PBS guy. He does all the PBIS, meetings and everything. If there's a thing, he comes to me and says, "Hey, this is what we're thinking," and I'll be like, "Cool, go do it." Or let's think about some things. My other assistant principal runs a lot of our intervention systems to where we have an actual program to where students and teachers can request each other to where we're getting people where they need to go. So a teacher can request someone said, "Hey, I need, Bobby Joe or Susie Q to come to my intervention because they struggled on this standard." And we call it a high T. So we'll put a really high priority on them so they can get to that. So we have this whole system that he manages to make sure kids are where they need to be for their interventions and things like that. And so like there's a lot of things, and so it's just being comfortable with delegating that.
Mhm.
And when I was a small school principal, I had to do everything. When I became a bigger school principal, I had to learn what not to do. I had to
Yeah.
learn to be, hey, keep your hands out of this cookie jar because I got this, right? So it's kind of like for me, I was like, oh, okay, I can actually sit back and let the systems run because they had systems here before I got here, but we just kind of elevated some of them since I've been here. And so I just let things go. I just let things run. I'm here to support and help. And so that's kind of where I go back to being okay with not having to be in control because I don't want to be in control of everything. I think that sounds terrible. I just want the people to do their part, and then I'm here to help and support in those areas.
Yeah,
You
and
you can't possibly be in every space and lead every component or every structure that you have across
and
your
actually
system.
I think that hurts the people in the
I think so
systems
too.
when
Yeah.
you're building reliance.
The other thing is that when you delegate responsibility to someone else, you're giving them an opportunity to learn some of the leadership skills that you have, and that they can naturally engage in some of those leadership opportunities, which is fantastic too.
I think the one thing that I'm doing now is I kind of know some of my teachers that want to kind of maybe become an administrator someday.
Yeah,
So I'm advising them on, hey, you need to be a part of this committee.
yeah.
Hey, you need to do these things because you need to build that leadership capacity. So when you get an opportunity, you can speak to, hey, these are the things I've done as a teacher in leadership roles. And so you have experience doing that. If you don't do those things before you try to get into them, it's going to be much harder to get in those roles if you haven't built some leadership capacity prior to that. So right now I'm advising some of my staff on, hey, these are the things you need to do if you want to take your next step. But
Yeah.
that's coming down to knowing your staff and knowing their goals and then trying to help them accomplish those goals.
It's so funny when you talk from the small school experience to where you're at. I had a colleague once who's worked from the small rural up into leading districts. Whatnot. He said that the metaphor he reflects on is when I was in a small school, it was like you're riding a jet ski. You turn right and boom, you're going right. You turn left. He said, if we wanted to redo the timetable, we'd do it over a 1 day process.
Just do it.
Tomorrow, let's switch up how we're doing everything. And then he said, when he got into a bigger school, it was like a yacht. You had to test the winds, you had to look far out ahead, you have to start the turn, and you might not see it right away. You have to be looking forward on what's coming at us, many, many miles away. And then he said when he got into the larger system, it was like an aircraft carrier where you have to make calculations, you have to communicate with others that we're going to make this turn, you have to do all sorts of things to coordinate a team just to adjust your trajectory 2 kilometers to the east. It was a really
Yeah.
fascinating metaphor that I loved.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good to think about because, yeah, for me, in order to make some of the changes, I had to have my district office support. I had to have my school board support. We couldn't just make these changes. Like, we just basically, my biggest thing is, hey, school improvement team, let's get this information together. Let's make it to where they cannot say no.
Yeah.
Let's make it to where this is what we really, really want. And so far, it's been successful. They've approved everything that we wanted. and they just let us do our thing. And I'm able to share back the results to them, and they've been pretty good up, so far. So everything, I'm actually getting ready to present to our school board. We do a spotlight on learning every year. So I'm going to present all the great things that we're doing within our building, but I'm going to really highlight our attendance piece a little bit. But then we have a program called our work-based learning program that we implemented 2 years ago. That when I got here, it was like, hey, we really want to do this. I looked at them like, what's stopping you? And they're like, you really want to? I'm like, let's go. And so we were able to get that going. Now we're second year in, and so I'm going to highlight that. This is where I don't need the spotlight. I'm going to turn it over to my work-based learning teachers and those students and say, hey, I want you guys to share what your experiences were, because it doesn't mean as much coming from me, but it'll mean a lot more to our board if it comes from you. And so I'm going to highlight them on top of just talk about some data pieces and then kick it over to the fun stuff later.
Yeah, that's
So that, I
great.
mean, that's kind of like what I like to do is I like to highlight the things that we do well, and it doesn't need to be coming from me all the time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Jeff, what advice would you give a leader who's trying to build or sustain a culture of collaboration?
Oh man. I think, you hear this a lot, but I think building that relationship foundation and building that trust, because you're not going to be able to change hearts and minds without having that.
Mhm.
People got to get to know you authentically. Don't be fake. Don't be something you're not. Be who you are and be true to yourself. Because I think some people will think that they got to change who they are, their persona, to be able to lead. And for me, I'm just like, this is who I am. And sometimes I forget that I'm a building principal because I mean, yes, I'm a building principal. That's my status. That's my role. That's my job. But I'm just a person that wants to help support my teachers, my staff, and my students to be successful. And that's really what I do. And I look at myself more in that coaching role than I do anything else, is how can I coach people up to be successful? Because I was a coach for many years, and that's how I view my leadership as a coach now. And so I think building relationships, get in that trust, so you can make those changes that are needed, and listen to the people that you're leading, because they'll tell you what the problems are. They'll
Yeah,
say, hey,
yeah,
this is a problem, and they'll put a red flag on it. Your job is to go, okay, let's figure out solutions together.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're not trying to figure out solutions together, I don't think you're going to be very effective.
Mhm.
Actually, I know you're not going to be very effective.
Yep.
Well, Jeff, that is awesome. We're reaching the end of our time here. Would love, how could our listeners, viewers, find Principal JL if wishing to learn more or to connect with you further?
Yeah, I'm on several platforms. I don't know if that's a good idea, but here you go. I'm on TikTok as Principal JL. I'm on, X. I do have YouTube, but I just do use that for shorts. I'm on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page, and what else? Threads. And that's pretty much the big ones that I'll say that I'm on.
Awesome.
I do
Well,
have a Substack too.
yeah,
So
we'll make sure all of that is included in our show notes so that people can go follow, learn, and interact. Jeff, this has been an absolute pleasure, and it's always interesting when we have different guests on where each has a unique perspective,
Yeah.
but similar themes
mhm.
build through, and just love the focus for you on coaching and building systems that the way you help support as a leader is by supporting each and every other person in your building. So thank you for the work you do.
No, thank you guys for your time and having me on today.
All
Thanks
right,
so
take
much,
care.
Jeff. Take care.
All right, so reflecting on our conversation with Jeff really came through the idea of without relationships
Yeah.
and authentic relationships, it's really difficult to establish and sustain a truly meaningful, authentic culture of collaboration. You have to know one another, understand, care for each other more than just I know your name and the name of your kids,
Mm-hmm.
but
No.
I know what motivates you. I know what aspirations that you're looking to, and
Mhm.
how can I help support you to get there?
And really understanding people. And when he talks about building relationships, he's really listening and really understanding people. But also, a big part of what I took away from our conversation today was that he's setting up opportunities all the time
Mm.
for input and feedback from his staff, which also demonstrates that I trust you and I want you to be part of this decision-making process. And I loved some of the language that he used too, in that he was talking about the school improvement team and said that he invites them in
Yeah.
to be on a part of that. And when he needs to fill the spaces, then he'll go and ask people to be part of that. But really using that language around invitation,
Yeah.
love for you to be part of this, and again, demonstrating that trust and value in his staff, which is really amazing.
I also think that this is a mature understanding as a leader
Mm.
to not get caught into either or
Yeah.
conversations. And what I mean by that is, as a leader thinking, well, I can either care about my staff and build relationships, or I can create systems that people are utilizing. And it's not one or the other. It's I create systems that will bring out the best, help people to network, to connect, to care, but through creating a focus on relationships, it helps reinforce our system. These are two critical things, and it's really important for us as leaders to embrace and mindsets
Yeah.
rather than or.
And a replica of that is what happens in the classroom. So
Yeah.
teachers, often new teachers will come in and think, okay, I can't be anybody's friend. I can't build those relationships because they will just be chaos
Do you
if
remember the old advice we got at one point of don't smile until
yeah,
Christmas?
yeah,
Are
yeah,
you
which is
kidding me?
crazy.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, that I need to set up structures and routine for my classroom to
100%.
function well. But at the same time, I need to understand who are the children in my classroom and who are they as people, and really understanding their learning needs. Being able to have both of those things happening at the same time
Yeah.
creates that successful environment. But it's exactly the same at that
Structures and
leadership
routines,
piece.
but we can still care
Yeah.
and deeply care about
And
the
develop
individuals
those
there. Yeah.
relationships, positive relationships.
Well, and I really think that the idea of what he was sharing of distributing that leadership, empowering
Yeah.
others, but doing so in a way that is not about me having all the answers. In fact, as a leader, being authentic to say, I'm not sure, but let's create the structure to try and solve that issue that
Yeah.
we have. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to even as a classroom teacher, the idea that you're not perfect and don't
No.
expect to be. And in fact, you're going to create
And
deeper
things are going to work and
relationships.
things are not going
Yeah.
to work.
You're going to have establish deeper relationships when you can say, I don't know, but let's find that out together. I think the
Yeah.
same applies
Yeah.
from a leadership side of thing. In fact, if we have a really high functioning culture of collaboration, the response of, I'm not sure, but let's find out together,
Yeah.
I think would be happening all the time.
Yeah. And the question that he was talking about, that his team were talking about a particular thing that they wanted to see happen in their school. And his question was, well, what's stopping you?
Yeah. Yep.
Which puts it on your team to be able to say, oh, okay, let's move forward
Yep.
in that. And it actually reminds me a little bit of an experience that I had as a leader, in that I was really nervous about. I had started doing curriculum work with elementary schools, and then the superintendent came and said, so I want you to continue with this work into junior high and senior high. And I was quite nervous about doing that.
Mhm.
And he basically said, so what's stopping you?
Mhm.
And how can I help you to take those steps to move forward with it? And so we did.
And again,
off we
that's the
went.
realization that you can facilitate that by creating opportunities
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
people with the real expertise to come together to explore. Doesn't mean as the leader you have to know all and be ever present,
yeah.
but rather create the structures for it to be able to happen.
The other thing that he had mentioned too is in thinking about that school improvement piece and being able to move together and building that culture of collaboration, he was talking a little bit about, well, his language was changing minds and hearts and minds, changing hearts and minds. And when you think about that, then it's much, much more than just, let's do this thing, make it happen because it's what research says. But it's about what's in your heart and how do we work together to be able to move these efforts forward.
Absolutely. So as always, we'd love for you to like, share, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. We'll make sure that the contact information for you to be able to continue to learn. Jeff is really present in each of those platforms that he shared, so we'll ensure that that is available for you. And as always, reach out if there's questions, comments, guests that you feel should be part of our conversations as we continue to learn and reinforce the importance of building cultures of collaboration. With that, wishing you all the best.
See you soon.
Jigsaw Learning, founded by Kurtis and Lorna Hewson, is a team of educators who work with schools, districts, and educational leaders to establish collaborative response to ensure success for all students. Because every child deserves a team.